Okay, I think we're in chapter 19, page 168. Later that same night, I was back on the lookout platform as what. I'm sorry. Uh, it was mid-watch, 2 in the morning, that full moon high above us, casting short shadows of the ships. The white foam behind the fantail was practically shining. The PC was quiet, but I knew the whole crew was being vigilant since we were so exposed. It might as well have been daytime, except that I'd at least have had a chance of seeing a glint of sunlight off a periscope lens, letting me know that we had U-boat company. I knew they were out there, just like Fulton said, down in the mess earlier, waiting for us to make a mistake. Well, if anybody did make one, it wasn't going to be me. I doubled my efforts, scanning the horizon with the binoculars and without, straining to pick up any sign of U-boat activity. They often surfaced at night and rode high in the water like any other ship. I doubted they would do that on a night like this when visibility was so strong, though. The minutes ticked by slower than I could ever remember, and I kept getting more and more anxious, practically giving myself whiplash, turning my head and trying to see everywhere all at once, not wanting to miss anything. And then I saw it. Dun, dun, dun. A torpedo, maybe a quarter mile away, coming right at us, lit up by phosphorus in the water so it gleamed silver. I sounded the alarm and yelled down to the bridge to take evasive action now. The squawk box barked out the order and the engines roared. Ooh, this is getting exciting. We shot ahead and then hard to starboard, nearly spinning in a circle like a matador fighting a bull. The torpedo kept racing right at us, and I couldn't see how it would miss until it did. We had pulled just enough ahead and swung around just enough that it shot right past us and continued harmlessly out into the ocean, thankfully not hitting any of the other ships. The call went out to general quarters, and as guys ran to their posts, our PC swung all the way around and now raced in the direction the torpedo had come from. I was still in the crow's nest, and first to see a second torpedo almost coming straight at us. I yelled down to the bridge again, and this time it was easier to dodge. We continued on to where the U-boat must have been, not waiting to get there before the order came to fire the cannon, even though we could see the target. But it had to be ahead of us somewhere and fairly close by. The shells exploded, sending those giant plumes of water up into the night sky like silver fountains in the moonlight. "Prepare depth charges," the captain barked over the squawk box as we pressed on, our PC going so fast we seemed to be skimming the tops of the waves again. There was no time to climb down from the lookout platform, so I held on as tight as I could and might have been the only one to see the third torpedo just before it hit. So the torpedo hit them. The explosion was on our starboard side, and it threw me so hard against the rail that I would have gone over and fallen to the bridge if my safety line hadn't been attached. I might have hit my head because I blacked out for a minute. It had to have only been a minute because when I regained consciousness, the ship was still rocking wildly from the explosion. I dragged myself up and looked down at the ship, where the guys were also picking themselves up and going back to their stations. I expected to see torn metal, fires, all kinds of destruction, but the damage must have been under the ship somewhere. And since we weren't listening to the side, I hoped it wasn't too bad. Maybe not a direct hit. Next thing I knew, we were firing back at the U-boat with everything we had. Maybe someone had gotten a sonar ping or visual sighting. My vision had been okay at first, but now I was having a hard time seeing. Something was covering my face, and when I wiped it away, I realized it was my own blood pouring from a gash on my forehead. More explosions threw me down again from the depth charges and the rockets, and this time I stayed down, both hands pressing down, pressing against the wound to stop the bleeding. Something happened. Maybe we scored a hit because there was more firing. Machine guns on the aft deck, which meant we had been in a firefight with the U-boat, which meant the U-boat had surfaced and it was fighting rather than surrendering the way the other one had done. Ooh. I tried to get up, but must have lost too much blood because I felt faint and sagged back down onto the lookout platform, my legs too weak for me to stand. But I wanted to be down there. I wanted to be helping. I wanted to be shooting guns at those Germans and protecting my friends and my ship. Engines revved and the PC jerked into motion, away from the battle. I heard another engine, and that must have been the U-boat doing the same thing. Both ships were damaged, including, I found out later, our big gun, which was why we couldn't use it in the face-off, and both ships were retreating. I kept hoping I would see the U-boat sink, but it just kept pulling away from us until it was out of sight and out of range. I managed to drag myself down from the lookout platform, though my hands kept slipping because of all the blood. Ooh. I still don't know how I managed it. When I got to the bridge, I collapsed again, but everything was so chaotic on the ship that nobody noticed at first. Others had been wounded, and the officers and crew were scrambling to help them and to shore up leaks in the bulkhead and to make repairs down in the engine room. Oily smoke billowed up from somewhere below, and then I blacked out again. It's probably Dad calling me, but I'm going to get back to him in a second. I want to just finish this chapter. I must have been out for quite a while because when I woke up, I was below decks in my bunk. It took me a few minutes to figure that out. My head was heavy with bandages wrapped around me like a turban. There was still blood all over the front of my uniform, but it was dried. Two sailors were talking in low voices nearby. Ooh, but I only heard part of what they were saying. Some guy in the engine room. Pipe burst. Killed instantly. Ooh. Right away, I thought about Woody and tried to sit up, to go find him, to make sure he was okay, and it wasn't him they were talking about, but I was too weak. I collapsed back into my bunk. My heart raced, and there was pounding my head, and it felt as if it was going to split my skull into two. Hey now, one of the sailors said. Easy there, buddy. Just lie back down. You got hurt pretty bad. You can't get up? Was it Woody? I whispered. My mouth was so dry, my throat parched, and I could barely speak. One of the guys gave me some water. Then I asked again about Woody, my heart sinking at the thought of him gone. But it wasn't him. Whew. Woody, they said, he had been a hero. No, I'm sorry. Woody, they said, had been a hero. One man had died in the engine room when the torpedo partially blew in the side of the ship, but Woody had saved two others. He pulled them on to safety, one of the guys said. Burned his hands going back for the second one, too. I couldn't believe it. The guy who didn't know his right from his left, who had the words tattooed on his arm so he could remember, who comped himself out walking into a pipe in the engine room his first day on the ship, who got so hysterical that he nearly drowned me and Straub had to knock him out when we went overboard, the same guy had known exactly what to do in the emergency. Not only dragging those men to safety, burning his hands in the process, but as I later found out, also going back a third time to put out the engine room fire, and staying to help shore up leaks from the blast. That farm boy, one of the sailors said, shaking his head. You never know who's going to come through in a situation like that. Some just freeze on you, but some, like him, well, it's good to have him on our side, I can tell you that. I must have slept after that or just drifted back into unconsciousness. When I came again, head still pounding but not quite as bad, Woody and Straub were there. About time you opened your eyes, Straub said. We were just about to give up on you. Figured we might have to do one of those burials at sea. Nah, Woody said, waving his bandaged hands. We're just glad you're okay. They think you might have a concussion. Nice cut on your head you got there. Lots of blood. Yeah, said Straub. Better take it easy. But they said you could be up and about in a couple days. Nothing that won't heal right up. I heard somebody in the engine room I couldn't finish. Woody nodded solemnly. It was Big Carrot, the chief motor machinist's mate. He was standing right next to where the torpedo had and caught the full force of it. Woody shook his head as if he couldn't quite get his mind all the way around what had just happened. He didn't seem upset. I guess that would come later. He just seemed bewildered, confused, lost. So that's a big word there, buddy, bewildered. So that's like when you're just like, your head's kind of spinning and you're just sort of like in awe of what happened, bewildered. They got a couple more of our guys too, Straub said. That guy Fulton you were just having dinner with, he caught some metal in his side and bled out. Ooh, so the guy that just talked to him died. Ugh. But I'm pretty sure we got a lot more of theirs than they got of ours. I started crying then. I couldn't help it. The tears came on their own, and I couldn't stop, no matter how hard I tried. I turned my face away from Woody and Straub toward the hull, and I wished I was back home on Ocracoke Island, back in my house, in my own bed, with my own family. Woody and Straub patted me on the shoulder and left me alone to cry myself back to sleep. He's only 12. You have to remember, he's almost your age, buddy. So can you imagine being on a warship and hearing that people there died and getting an injury? That must have been so scary and hard. So, and it's okay for guys to cry. Sometimes they say boys shouldn't cry, but it's okay for boys to cry when they're scared or when things happen. So just remember that. I love you. I love Chloe so much. I love Daddy. I love Lola. I love Duffy. I miss you. I miss you all. I can't wait to get back and tell you all about my adventure. I love you.